Studio Kingsley is proud to present this unabridged recording of Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland by Byron Kingsley. Read by the author. This work is copyrighted 2022 by Byron Kingsley. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, locales, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. And now, Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland.
私たちは物語を続けます。
Princess Kitty, the daughter of a royal family that rules the kingdom of KAWAII Wonderland, has triumphed in her first great adventure on the New World. And in the light of this achievement, she was then tasked with a sole 3-week expedition to make friends out of other grown-ups, resulting in leaving Todd and Audrey Pratchett, the two friends who made her feel right at home. Now, at the start of the expedition, she is yearning to know more and more about this new world. What wonders shall await her? And where would she go first after leaving the Pratchetts? Volume 3 Princess Kitty's Adventure at Sea. They that go down to the sea in ships, and occupy their business in great waters. These men see the works of the Lord, and his wonders in the deep. The Book of Common Prayer. Chapter 18, in which Princess Kitty goes out to sea. Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland has been at Kodono for 2 days since the start of her expedition. The constant noise with a bustling sound of people hurrying along the street are all around her. Everything in Kodono seems faceless and impersonal. Since she first came here after a week, she had started to think she would be able to manage all right here. By the time her 3-week expedition starts, her confidence becomes constant. Maybe there are people, busy people, who need help with little things. Maybe she could help them. After all, she can do great things. For now, outside of some of the Pratchett family, she had no friends. At least, not yet. But where would she go after she left the Pratchetts? For now, what she knew is that the city of Kodono is not yet ready for all the things she can do. So, she has to know the city more and more, even though Todd once spoke to her about the founder and his legacy, after the completion of the Market Square clock tower. She was ascending down Main Street, looking for someone to ask the way to some public library. However, she was easily distracted by a group of people who are currently unveiling a huge red and white banner. It was so huge, they had to set up a roadblock, especially the streetcars after they carefully removed the overhead wires that power them. She can hear the shouting orders of men who are either on ladders or on a crane. Careful with the unveiling! Don't let the trees tear it up! Careful! Careful! Easy does it! Come on, put your backs into it! Seeing that they're busy, she turns away. That's when she spots an old St. Bernard dog standing and staring in front of her.
Where did you come from? She asked. You know how to get to the library?
The dog said nothing and took a few steps past her before looking back at her again. She turns around and said,
Can't you see that they're busy? I'm not going that way. If you're really leading me, do you know an alternative route?
The dog turns her head to the left and runs off. Princess Kitty immediately goes after her. Oddly enough, Much to the princess's surprise, the dog did direct her to the public library at 4110 McQueen Street. It was a large building, just a block southeast of Main Street. It was a modest, vine-covered building with pale yellow walls, and the wide concrete walk up to the door was lined with fresh new morning glories. On the lawn was a large bronze statue of Plato, the old Greek philosopher Princess Kitty has never heard of. She turned to the dog.
You've been to the library before?
The dog lies down at the feet of Plato, as if she's about to die.
You're tired, huh?
Princess Kitty asked.
Okay, you go and rest now if you like. Thank you for leading me here. I'll go inside and learn more about this city.
The reading room she's in was vast, with green columns and 2 balconies with bookshelves and brass railings. But it was deserted, except for an old man with a right glass eye reading at one of the tables. She was looking for some books about the history of Kadono when an old woman in a yellow shirt, who was a librarian, approached her.
"Can I help you with anything, young lady?"
she asked.
Where can I find books about the history of this Kadono?
Princess Kitty asked.
I'm actually new here.
"New here?"
The old librarian asked.
"Where did you come from?"
I come from a magical kingdom.
"Magical? You mean from another world or something?"
Princess Kitty nodded.
"Goodness!"
The old librarian said.
"Then you must be the half-cat creature who came up from the sky. People are still talking about it. Even I saw you with the crowd."
You saw me?
Princess Kitty asked.
You saw me when I first set foot here?
"Oh, yes. They've been wondering if you are actually harmless. Are you?"
Why, of course I am. However, I remain less conspicuous. I have a long way to go in having the city welcome me.
Say, you ever been to school?
I'm not familiar with this school.
Well, you should. You can't make it through life without education. Nobody does. Education tells people how to think, how to work properly, and how to make decisions. The better your education, the more choices and opportunities you're going to have in life.
That will not concern me. I have the knowledge of the kingdom, the place where I was born.
Really?
The old librarian asked.
Do you even know what 2 times 4 is?
The answer is 8.
Princess Kitty said.
What about 6 times 2?
The answer is 12.
9 times 2?
The answer is 18.
2 times 7?
The answer is 14.
How about 7 times 29 times 19 times 89?
It's simple. The answer is 343,273.
I can't believe it!
The old librarian exclaimed.
How is it simple? A half-cat person like you answering such a complicated problem.
Complicated? It's like adding the same number depending on how many.
Princess Kitty said.
The first problem is to add 10 sevens together, then you get 70. If you add another 70 and 63, you get 203. The second problem is to add 10 203s together, and you get 2030. If you add 1827, you get 3857. The third problem is to add 10 3857s together, and you get 38,570. You add another 38,570, and you get 77,140. You add 4 more 77,140s, and you get 308,560. Now, here's something interesting. You add 9 3857s, and you get 34,713. Then you add 308,560 and 34,713 together, and there you get the answer. That's why this problem is simple. 7 times 29 times 19 times 89 does equal 343,002. Are you all right? Do you feel faint? Here, go sit and rest.
Sitting behind a study desk, the old librarian said,
I will be fine, but I'm still shocked that... Oh, don't worry about me. I'll find someone who can help you. Bertha? Bertha, you bird, could you come over here?
Immediately, Bertha, another old woman who wears a pink dress, approaches.
Yes, madam?
She asked.
What do you want? Are you tired?
I want you to help this girl for me, the old librarian said. She needs to find some books about our city. Don't worry about me. I'm less tired than usual.
Bertha takes Princess Kitty by the hand, saying to her,
Right this way.
She leads the princess to the reference section of the library.
Now the reference section is where you'll find what you're looking for, dear,
Bertha said.
Pick any book you like. There may be something that interests you about our city.
As Bertha leaves, Princess Kitty pulls out a book titled The Legacy of Kodono, a City, by Jeremy Robert Haywood, probably a historian who was a member of the Kodono Historical Society. She sat down and begins to read some pages. After the death of founder Ezra Kodono in the winter of 1786, the city lives on in his absence, with Samuel Morimo being the first mayor of Kodono from 1786 to 1790. Morimo was responsible for establishing the fishing community that is Morimo Harbor, which was named after him. The most known fishing vessel was the schooner Spirit of Freedom, with a capacity of 29,789 board feet, before it was lost at sea on July 29, 1789. After serving his term, Morimo passed the mayoral duty to Trevor Pollock from 1791 to 1795, followed by Bavarian-born Ulrich Walbaum from 1796 to 1800. Dudley Lowe served as mayor from 1801 to 1805, followed by Isaiah Long from 1806 to 1810. It was until 1811 where Oswald Larcher served 2 terms as mayor, from 1811 to 1819. Larcher's successors are as follows: Jeffrey Collins, from 1820 to 1828, Horace Lowry, from 1829 to 1837, Ivan Burke, from 1838 to 1846, Bernard Hostin, from 1847 to 1855, Lawrence Quince, from 1856 to 1864, Ian McFadden, from 1865 to 1873. Starting in 1835, 100 years after the founding of Kodono, to celebrate the centennial, a summer fair is held in June on the second Sunday. The fair is a success and helps the city flourish into the 19th century. Ever since, the summer fair is held once every 10 years in June on the second Sunday. Princess Kitty stopped reading and calls out,
Bertha! Who's currently the mayor of the city?
Fitzroger Donovan, the 20th,
Bertha calls back.
He's been mayor for 4 years. That depends on whether he can get to serve his second term by the end of the year.
Maybe I'll someday meet this mayor,
Princess Kitty said.
You could still see his face at every campaign poster he's in,
Bertha stated. The old man got up and asked,
You haven't heard of a man named Donovan before?
What is he like?
Princess Kitty asked, although she was barely disturbed by his glass eye.
I can assure you that he's very haughty and ruthless,
the old man said.
But he's very merciful.
Is he? As in compassionate?
You could say that.
When she saw the book without words on the cover, she asked,
What are you reading?
He shuts the book and placed it on the table.
I don't know. You can have it if you want.
When she saw him get up, she asked,
What is it about?
He chuckles before leaving with a limp.
Nothing important. Nothing important in here. So don't bother, you silly girl.
She frowned at his words. She has to find out by herself and see what he was reading. She opened the book, and she sees the title in black reading, Stranger Things in an Ordinary City by Furukawa Ryutaro. The author, she thought, was probably originated in Japan. She began reading. There was nothing special about the city of Kodono. Everybody knows that it was a deeply ordinary place. No astonishing thing ever happened there for 200 years. And the people who lived there were just regular people. They were the people you'd soon expect in Kodono to see anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such nonsense. They even didn't question the order of things. And the days passed, one very much like the other. She stopped reading.
Nonsense,
she thought.
How very unusual for a book to be mentioning this city in a library.
She continued reading. Back in the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1868, there was an unprecedented flourishing of culture and art in whichever religion you were affiliated with. Even stories of folklore about monsters and strange phenomena which cannot be explained. Nevertheless, there is always a consequence for even seeing something that was uncommon in everyday life, whether they're found in the mountains or caves, towns or villages, forests or seas. It includes some known creatures originated in folklore. Arashi no Sakama, or stormfish, a creature that resembles a catfish with pitch-black skin, white underbelly, and a cavernous mouth with pink lips curved into a grin. The size of the creatures vary from individual to individual. Referred to as the terror of the sea by locals, they possess the ability to create strong waves, earthquakes, and violent storms to bring the rage of the sea upon those who anger them. Capturing a stormfish as small as 4 meters is considered dangerous, and must be tossed back into the sea or suffer the wrath of the others. Mori no Okami, or Great Wolf of the Forest. A wolf goddess with white fur, a guardian to nature, to every tree and creeping thing. Upon finding her, you must submit to her so she can be appeased. However, you must wear either a sacred yukata or a kimono before you approach her. Although placid, there are times when she portrays her enmity to those who are antagonistic towards nature. Arashi no Tori, or Storm Bird, Arashi Bird. An avian creature that is beautiful and sophisticated, but also considered extremely deadly. They shoot lightning bolts from their eyes and create winds with their wings and cause power outages. Working together, they make tornadoes and hurricanes when they fly around together in circles. Aside from their beauty, they're not the birds any person want to come in contact with, for they kill any human or animal who is out in the open. When one Arashi bird is infuriated to its peak or is intimidated, it moves away to vent its frustration on someplace else, the equivalent of an angry storm migrating. As many are concerned, there might come a time when creatures become corporeal to believe in anything unusual. Nothing will ever be the same again. It's literally going to affect every aspect of human life as we know it. The unknown has many who are among the living and many ways of hearing. Closing the book, she picks it up and approaches the old librarian and Bertha.
Where did you get such a book as this?
Princess Kitty asked. What book? The old librarian said.
Books about creatures. It has no words on the cover, but you can see for yourself.
The old librarian opens up the book and said to her, I don't see anything. It's all blank.
Me too,
Bertha added. Princess Kitty looked at the pages herself, only to find them blank. There, the mocking voice of the old man called to her.
Nothing important. Nothing important in here.
In frustration, she closed the book, but the old librarian said, "But it's really lovely, dear. You can use it as a scrapbook or a journal." Princess Kitty just placed the book on the desk.
You can have it. It makes no difference now.
"My, there's nothing to be upset over an empty book," the old librarian said. "If it's all right with you, you can have your own library card and take books home. You can take as many as you like for 3 weeks. That will be wonderful, don't you say? I bet you like it, don't you?"
I don't have to take books with me,
Princess Kitty said.
I can just read them here, where it's nice and quiet.
If you change your mind on your next visit, let us know,
Bertha said.
I don't think so,
Princess Kitty said.
It's been a pleasure meeting you both.
Wait, the old librarian said.
I need to know your name.
I'm called the Royal Princess Kitty,
she said.
The cat daughter of KAWAII Wonderland.
KAWAII Wonderland?
Bertha asked.
Is it a place in a faraway land, like in one of the fairy tale books?
The old librarian asked.
I used to live there all my life,
Princess Kitty said.
But I'm never heading back. This world is my home now.
Oh, really?
The old librarian asked.
I hope you take care of yourself.
Princess Kitty nodded in agreement and left the library. She wanders into the western part of the city and into the entrance of Morimo Harbor before meeting face to face with one of the harbor's locals. He was a big, beefy, tan-haired man with barely a neck. He has a tattoo on his arm, a Japanese word for red.
So this is Morimo Harbor, is it?
She asked. Aye, the fisherman said. A fishing village this is. Morimo Harbor was located near a fishing ground, with an economy based on catching fish and harvesting seafood. The harbor itself had served the sailors, fishermen, and dock workers of all races for 148 years. The docks were alive with constant activity as ships of every size arrived to be loaded and unloaded. Sailors, fishermen, and dock workers of every race coming and going, usually residing in terraced houses that were constructed for them. Loading cranes tower high above the water. The small waves lapped against the pilings, and the cargo and fishing vessels rolled in their moorings with a stately grandeur.
I've read some information about the harbor and the city's history at the library,
she said. Doesn't surprise me if you do. Even Samuel Morimo, first mayor of the city, responsible for establishing the fishing community. You even heard of the Spirit of Freedom too? Big boat at the time. Lost at sea, sadly. However, the harbor is no place for a girl like you.
No place for a girl like me,
she asked.
Now this will not be tolerated. I'll be careful.
All right, the fisherman said, then leaves her. Just stay out of trouble, though. Some people are not that friendly. She then ventured into the village. Sure enough, she was getting a few odd glances from the locals, as if a girl with cat ears was something out of the ordinary, something unheard of. However, she noticed the first sign of something peculiar. A man standing on a roof playing a flute. He was thin, hollow-cheeked, and distinguished-looking in an old-fashioned blue frock coat with gold buttons and epaulets, matching trousers, and black shoes. She blinked and stared at the man, but he didn't stare back. She just kept on walking, giving herself a little shake and put the man out of her mind. She thought of nothing but finding something to do. Eventually, she went near the entrance of the Crimson Pig, a nearby tavern, a place of business where people gathered to drink alcoholic beverages and be served food. She found herself squinting as she entered the Crimson Pig. It was darker inside than she would have expected. Perhaps the culprit, Our culprits turn out to be dimly lit brass oil lanterns screwed to the support beams. It didn't occur to her that the dark interior, in combination with the brilliantly lit entrance of the tavern, permitted everyone inside to see each newcomer before she could see them. This murky, moldy place is filled with a startling array of sailors and fishermen at the long wooden bar, huddling over drinks. At first, the sight is disturbing. Leaning closer, she saw an empty spot at the bar. A small knot of rough-looking men lounged there, drinking, laughing, and trading stories of dubious origin. What made the place liven up with excitement is the music that was playing on an upright piano, depending on who was pressing the keys. She moves forward, but a huge, rough-looking bartender stops her.
"Young lady,"
he glared.
"you're not supposed to be here. This place is for grown-ups only. No children are permitted. I'm going to have to ask you to leave."
Is that so?
She asked, her composure unchanged as she approached the barroom table.
Then I won't cause any trouble.
"I don't care. I want you to leave immediately, and be quick about it."
She leans closer at him and said firmly,
You will let me stay in your tavern.
"You're this close and having me call the police on you if you don't get out," he threatened. "You are trespassing."
She glares at him. Her eyes brighten, and her white pupils reshape into hearts.
You will let me stay in your tavern,
she repeated. The bartender leans back, dumbstruck. I will let you stay in my tavern.
I will not cause any trouble.
You will not cause any trouble.
Carry on.
Carry on. Go. She turned and walked further into the tavern. Looking around, nobody seemed to care about some princess invading here. Sitting in one of the booths, with his legs casually crossed, was a man in dark pants and a black seaman's jacket. Every seaman in Mortimer Harbor recognized the grizzled features of a fisherman they knew only by the name of 54-year-old Fred Groton. He saw Princess Kitty in the room, with a flinty-eyed stare, and took a bite from a biscuit. So what brings you here? A little girl like you, he spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. His Irish accent was a strange hybrid, the result of 30 years as an itinerant sailor. There were plenty of stories surrounding him, fueled by years of gossip. How he had killed one of his lovers with a harpoon, how he had won against a floozy in an arm wrestling contest, how he could drink any man under the table with a bottle of Guinness. None of them are farther from the truth, yet the rumors continue. Originated from County Longford, the son of a farmer, he lived the life of a hermit out on the mouth of the bay, north of Mortimer Harbor. There had been some dispute from Mayor Donovan about zoning laws when Fred had a fishworks built out at its dock. No one in the right minds would live within 31 meters of the place, the stench of which polluted the whole air. Fred chartered his boat for big game fishing parties, men with paunches and soft hands looking for some kind of male ego fulfillment by catching sailfish and giant tuna. His fishing business also supplied the local taxidermist with carcasses which were stuffed, mounted, and sold as trophies at exorbitant prices.
I'm on an expedition,
she said.
I'm just getting started on it.
Are you? He smiled and took another bite of biscuit. For what? Fishing for profit? Why, how coincidental. Me and my party are fishing for profit this summer.
For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil,
she said.
I'm not here for fish. I'm here to make friends out of grown-ups.
Hope you don't mind being disappointed. His eyes darted round. You're not going to find any of them here. After all, there were 300,000 living inside a city such as this. But if you want, you can be my volunteer for an expedition of my own. 8 consecutive days of fishing on board the Maybelle. That can be enough to decide whether this, with the money you'll be earning, can be a very good career for you. She stared at him nervously and said,
I've never been on a ship in my life, so I accept your proposition in the name of the kingdom, but I won't do it for money.
Suit yourself, your highness. He smirked sarcastically. He stood up and put a hand to the bill of his cap in an ironic salute. Before she can follow him, a burly fisherman laughs and taunts, Hey, Fred, who's a girl? She your daughter? Can it, Pete? Fred snapped. This is none of your business. But Princess Kitty growled at Pete and hissed. What do you want? He asked. Arm wrestle? Fred came and grabbed her by the arm. Leave him alone. I know this sailor. He'll tear you to pieces. But she shoved him onto a chair and sat next to Pete. She took off her glove before having her elbow make contact with the table. They intertwined their fingers. You better watch out, a sailor said next to him. Cat's got claws. Who said she is? Pete scoffed. Hope she isn't going to cry. With that, the two of them were at it. But he begins to look worried when his opponent forced her arm with all her might. Her tail begins to puff up like a bottle brush. With a flip of her hand, she snapped his arm.
Let that be a lesson,
she sneered. She rose up and leaves the tavern, while Fred follows behind. Once out into the harbor, with the princess by his side, Fred had to admit to himself that he was stunned about just how strong a girl with a petite figure can be, at least at first. Do you have any idea of what you're doing? He asked. What's the matter with you? Trying to be tough?
He had it coming,
she replied, glaring. That was one of the fishermen who joined me. Now, thanks to you, I'll have to bring forth a replacement. She turned and hissed angrily at him.
And do you really want to irate me further on you?
When he didn't answer, she added angrily, her tail puffing up.
You better answer me right now!
He shook his head. I didn't mean to. I really need my arms to go fishing to earn a living. You know, out of all the captains in Moimo, I'm the most disciplined. I'm the most respected. Everything in my expeditions would result in lunacy without me.
Then I doubt no one could get on my bad side,
she said.
I'm not very lenient when it comes to that.
Wondering how strong she might be, he ordered, Let me see your hands. He took her hands in his own and turned them palm upwards.
What about them?
She asked. He squeezed, and she felt his rough hands clamp hers in a vice. I barely find tension inside them. You may be strong, but the way I see it, you'll be mistaken for a lanky life-size paper doll.
Hopefully there won't be any shenanigans, she said. That's what you're thinking, are you not? If you do, I won't make a burden. If you don't think I can, you can drive me away. What's it going to be?
He said nothing.
I thought so,
she said. Still, I have no idea a girl like you could ever fracture arms like poor Pete, he said.
The strength of the flesh is as nothing.
Seeing that her triangular ears twitched, he added, By the way, are you really a cat just like someone said back at the Crimson Pig?
So you've noticed finally,
she asked. I do. But you need to hide those ears with a hat. There'll be 35 people on my ship, and I don't want them to get spooked for the next 8 days. You also need to change those clothes. Got a name? You look like a princess with those clothes on. Princess of what?
Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland,
she introduced. Never heard of it, he said. And I don't think I will.
You don't have to. It seems to me that despite some trouble, we're off to a good start.
Fred Grodin's boathouse at the mouth of the bay is a Gothic wooden structure that was in strict violation of the city's building code. He had applied 3 times for permission to rebuild after the original boathouse, which had become too small for his growing fishing business, had burned to the ground. Local gossip said the fire had been set deliberately for the insurance. Each application had been turned down, each time with Mayor Donovan's signature on the decision. Fred, who who had a low level of tolerance for any kind of officialdom, had gone ahead and built the new boathouse anyway, and was now locked in a dispute with City Hall. The interior of the building was like a barn. There was an upper level of bare boards like a hayloft, reached by narrow steps of fresh timber. A solid framework of beams was hung with ropes and nets and tackle. The lower floor was furnished with a number of workbenches and large metal drums, which were used as tripods for boiling shark meat. The interior was entirely utilitarian, and nothing seemed designed for comfort. The one concession to decoration was the adornment on the walls with the trophies of fish. They seemed to take up almost all available space. Small ones, large ones, crooked ones. Beneath the stench of the fish, Princess Kitty could still smell the recently smoothed wood of the floorboards. A campaign poster that was stapled onto a wooden support beam read, "Re-elect Fritz Donovan for a better Kadono. Precision, order, decency, integrity." The picture above the inspiring words showed the face of a handsome man about 46 years old, but it was decorated with devil horns, angry eyebrows, and some fangs in red paint, and some of the words were crossed out. With an insulting message in white, it read, "Donovan can bite me." Seeing the defaced poster on the support beam is enough to send a message to her that Fred Grodin did not fear the law, he did not fear the mayor, he did not fear society, he did not fear God, he did not fear the devil, he did not fear any authority he had disagreed with. She can't help but say to herself,
I don't think I'm going to trust this man.
To which the other half of her mind simply said,
It doesn't even hurt to know him better. There are many ways to make friends so easily.
While Fred is on the phone calling his crew members, she trades her princess dress with a brown shirt to hide her tail and blue pants. She trades her crown with a yellow cap to hide her ears. She wanted to keep her boots. The size and volume of her paws makes wearing ordinary shoes very painful and uncomfortable. As he hangs up the phone, he said to her, "I'll get your old clothes packed up." She nodded. "But what about your face?" he asked.
It shall be taken care of,
she said. "When we get there, I hope the crew is on board with the equipment. I do hope they're able to interact with you, especially with those clothes you're wearing. Just be glad I loaned you some of mine." She looks down at herself.
That depends. One person told me that people in the harbor aren't that friendly.
"Well, all but the 11 men I've known," he said. "Well, at least one of them who won't be making the journey. But that's ancient history now." He pulls out his flask and made a toast. "Here's to sailing with a long-legged lady." He took a swig. "By the way, should I call you just Kitty instead of Princess Kitty? Right now you don't look like a princess to me."
If it pleases you,
she said. "By the way, I can't help myself whether or not it's bad luck to have a lady on board."
Why?
she asked.
What will the men think, seeing me on board a ship like I'm some kind of persona non grata?
Having a woman on board a ship when it was at sea would anger the sea gods, bringing on horrible weather and rough waves. In some cases, women who are on board ships were even tossed overboard in order to attempt an appeasement of the gods.
That's just horrible, Fred.
What do you expect? The seamen working in Moimo are a superstitious lot. I'm not one of those people. I want you to know that I seldom believe in those things. As long as you pay no attention to them, you won't have them get into your hair. In fact, having a cat on board a ship was a sign of good luck, most likely because they were excellent pets, and also helped to keep pests on the boat to a minimum.
But I'm no ordinary seaman, nor an ordinary cat. I'm really a cat-girl princess.
In my eyes, you're like one of those women I've seen. Except they're not half cat like you, nor do they have pink hair. Now, after I pack up your clothes, you'll come with me, and I'll take you to my vessel. We're due to sail in 30 minutes. Driving his battered Bedford truck, Fred escorts Kitty along the wharf where his fishing vessel was moored. She was holding onto her suitcase that has her skirt and her crown inside. On the way, he can't help but sing, "When Irish eyes are smiling, sure it's like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. And when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they steal your heart away." Suddenly, he brakes hard. The tires scream as the Bedford comes to a stop in front of a wildly gesticulating bearded figure, dressed in his black wool coat, matching cap, and beige trousers. He's standing in front of the car, waving his arms, his face in darkness. Fred is about to start forward slowly when the man begins to beat with the bottle he was holding in one hand on the radiator hood, bellowing, "Blow the wind southerly, southerly, southerly. Blow the wind south over the bonny blue sea. Blow the wind southerly, southerly, southerly. Blow, bonny breeze, my lover to be." A pause, more fierce pounding on the hood and more bellowing. Irritated, Fred shifts into reverse. He makes a slalom turn, and the ride along the wharf resumes. But not before the drunken man hurls his bottle at the rear of the Bedford, shattering on impact. "That's Edward Gaffney, a local dock worker," Fred informed Kitty. "Guess he didn't take a suspension well. He knocked crates of fish over, which then got spoiled. All that work for the past week and a half, wasted for those fishermen. He got suspended for a few weeks with his pay forfeited. Reckless bugger."
"How far is your ship?"
she asked. "Not that far now." From the sight of the ship alone, a casual passerby might think the ship is abandoned, perhaps even be surprised to learn it was seaworthy. The Maybelle is a rusty old 65-meter-long ship who has seen better days, or years, whichever you prefer. He saw her visibly stiffen when she realized that this is the ship she'll be residing for the next 8 days at sea. Trying to picture this boat as seaworthy would have caused her to collapse in hysteria. She hasn't been to sea before, but to think of traveling in this huge, lousy,
"What a piece of junk!"
she finally said, unable to hide her feelings any longer. "Not so loud!" he scolded. "They don't like to hear that," she demanded.
"That's really the ship we'll be sailing?"
"You'll grow into it over time, I promise. Don't let appearance betray you. It's more spacious on board. She'll do fine, I'll see to that. Also, you agreed to come." He didn't think the size of the Maybelle was really what had given her pause, but he also did not intend to let her hesitate. In his eyes, that was bad. The two hopped out of the Bedford and hurried past rough-looking, faceless sailors, working hard to get the boat underway for the coming expedition. Activity was everywhere in a nearly unendurable frenzy, crates being loaded, along with traveling trunks and all kinds of supplies. Smoke began to pour from the ship's funnel, a result of the boilers being lit from within. "Not exactly the foresail, is it?" Fred asked.
"The what?"
Kitty asked. "That's one of the swankiest trawlers in the harbor is what it is. Still in service since July of 27.
"So how long have you been working as a fisherman?"
For about 30 years now."
"And have you been on the whatever you call it before?"
"Are you daft or what?" I prefer to work in unprofessional trawlers like the Maybelle. In 1904, I moved here from County Longford to start working as a fisherman instead of being a farmer like my father. A year later, I first worked at the Nomad and made enough to support myself in the flat. Eventually, I had enough experience to captain my own ship and have my own crew. The first ship I've captained is the Chamberlain in 1919, which was in service until 1925 when it was decommissioned.
Is that so? And is the Maybelle different from...
I don't want you to worry too much. Do you understand that by the moment you step on board? I tell you, in spite of appearance over time, the Maybelle has been to fishing expeditions since 1928. As one of the most hard-working men who ever served the whole fishing community, it is my civic privilege to continue the tradition.
Oh, how I feel pity for you.
Well now, I sure have no regrets in captaining a ship like the Maybelle. It's like I was destined to do so. 7 years I've been sailing with her. Sure, there's been winter squalls and storms and fog, but that was one chance in a million that anything could possibly go wrong. No force of nature shall ever bring her down. You depend on it. With that, her heart swelled with excitement and fear. That's because her adventure at sea is about to begin. It would be hard leaving the city of Kadono after knowing the history of it, and the fishing community of Moimo Harbor. She'd be happy if she started the first week of her expedition only on land. But the vast sea ahead is proven to be promising, expecting some clear skies and calm waters. Of course, she already realized that she'll be the only individual of the opposite sex on board this ship. She has to fit in, fast. As they approach, Fred can see a young boy of 19 arguing with a huge bald man who is supervising the loading of the ship, while barking orders at a couple of dock workers manning a crane. The young boy points at the cargo that's being recklessly carried up onto a crane. An upright piano is one of the cargo. Fred rushed towards the bottom of the gangway, calling out to the bald man. "What's going on here?" The bald man said, "It's this college boy. He's griping about that old piano we're loading up onto the ship." "It's a 1903 Steinway Model K from Kerrigan," the young boy calls out. "I want the dock workers to carry it slowly. That costs $500 according to a Sears catalog." "They do that, and we waste time," the bald man hissed. "We have to depart as planned." "Give the kid a break, Mr. Kozlov," Fred ordered. "He volunteered, hasn't he? Besides, can't you see we're in the company of someone I've met just recently?" The Maybelle's first mate, Pyotr Kozlov, was a sturdy-looking, blue-eyed, humorless comrade. A strong, steady bloke, and that's the truth of it. But despite his reputation during the Revolution of 1917 as someone not to be trifled with, he was a man who got things done, and done properly. It wasn't only his hat that identified him as Fred's right-hand man, but a definitive air of command. Fred introduced Kitty to Kozlov. "This is Kitty, a girl who's going to be joining this expedition," he said. "Kitty who?" Kozlov demanded. "Does she have a last name?" Hesitantly, Fred answered. Felinus. Kitty Felinus. I met her at the Crimson Pig. Told me that she's on an expedition. Be careful you decide to arm wrestle with her. She'll break your arm like it's a matchstick. So Miss Felinus has been working out," Kozlov scoffed. "Very unheard of, I'm sure. Secondly, don't you think bringing a girl is considered bad luck?" "That actually offended her," Fred said. Just then, a black cab came to a stop behind him and Kitty, and out came the smart, aggressive up-and-comer in his brown jacket above his black shirt and dark jeans. "All right," he barked, pulling out his battered suitcase. "You told me to come here, so here I am." Fred turned and glared at him. "Of course you are, Bugsy. Now, if you don't want to waste any time arguing, I suggest you get on that boat." "Well, at least I'm in this for the money," Bugsy said. "I often hate going fishing." No surprise there. You think you can get another job at Moimo? Trust me, there won't be any easy ones here. I don't even care if you're not seaworthy enough. Bugsy saw Kitty with Fred and asked, "And who's this girl?" "This is Miss Kitty Felinas," Fred introduced her. "I don't think you'll be seeing her more often." Bugsy shook his head. "That depends," he said, and went up the gangway. After all, he'll be spending every waking moment on board the ship.
Felinas?
Kitty asked, glaring awkwardly. "I have to think of a surname for you," Fred whispered. "What else would I call you? And never mind Bugsy, if you know what's good. He hesitates, he's short-fused, outspoken. Your best bet is to not be near him."
I think that man actually looks like a city person rather than a sea person. Are you sure there's friendly people on board the ship other than that young man? Can anyone from this place be truly affable?
"I know them as they would know me, the best of the best. I've got Hector Marin, the ship's cook, Cyril Lefebvre, specialist and certified surgeon, Lawrence Barnes, ship's navigator and radio operator, Irving Conahan, one of the engineers who keeps this tub seaworthy, Isaac Gardner, a professional who works at Moimo for 12 years, Oliver Bell, the eyes of the ship, along with his brother Nicholas. Finally, Otis McGinty, the old man who takes the wheel. I'll make sure you get acquainted with them, even my new cabin boy."
Should I get on board, Fred?
"Just watch your step." With careful consideration, she heads up to the gangway, still holding on to her suitcase. As soon as the last of the cargo gets safely transported onto the ship, including the Steinway, Fred heads up the gangway and walking over to Kitty. "You see?" he asked. "Told you it's more spacious on board. You got your 10-meter wide pine deck, wide enough to walk around or stretch your legs. You'll find the mess underneath the wheelhouse for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just go through the watertight door. Now, if you excuse me, I'll call it to you again, just as we're about to set sail." He walked off, calling out to Kozlov, who was carrying a clipboard. "Is that all the supplies?" "It's all right here, comrade," Kozlov said, before reading the inventory on the clipboard. "Got 200 pounds of flour, 25 pounds of bacon, 10 pounds of rice, 5 pounds of coffee, 25 pounds of sugar, half a bushel of dried beans, 10 pounds of salt, small keg of vinegar, 9 cans of milk, 80 pounds of butter, 15 dozen fresh eggs, 20 pounds of bread, 22 heads of lettuce, 30 dozen sacks of potatoes in storage, 35 pounds of onions, 40 pounds of tomatoes, 10 dozen oranges, 5 bushels of apples." "Even the bottles of ale?" Fred asked. "And the sarsaparilla?" "Everything is accounted for, including harpoons, gaffs, and bait. You can read the rest of the inventory if you like, but we haven't got all day." Fred peers onto the railing and see a young, dark-haired man carrying a press camera approach the gangway, as though he intended to be aboard the ship, but turns out that he isn't. "Excuse me," he barked. "What are you doing here?" Fred asked. "Can't you see we're taking off?" "I know," the photographer said. "Seeing that one of the boats is going to be leaving the dock, well, it would be nice if I take a picture of you and your crew." "All for the sake of journalism, you mean?" Fred scoffed. "You go right ahead. I'm sure you have a story to write." "That depends," the photographer said, and goes up the gangway. "Sid Farrell, photographer at the Kadono Times. I want your men to the bulwark at the front of the wheelhouse while I set up." Fred turns to Kozlov. "Round up the men on deck," he ordered. Kozlov nodded and heads off. "I'm certain you'll face clear skies out into the open sea," Sid said. "Would you tell me your name?" "Fred Grodin," he introduced. Grodin. "Grodin," Sid repeated. "And the ship you're captaining is the Maybelle, is that correct?" Fred nodded. "That's right. I'm going out fishing with my crew and a woman." Sid can feel his smile drop. "Well, that was unheard of." "So does a girl with pink hair, Mr. Farrell. And let's hope she wouldn't be a nuisance. It's best not to question. Once the 35 people have been assembled to the bulwark, including Fred, Kitty, the young cabin boy, and Bugsy, Sid took several shots. "I'm certain that you'll put them to good use," Fred calls out. "Now, if you wouldn't mind, we have a rendezvous with the North Sea." "That depends if something bad happens to you and your men," Sid stated. "Oh, really?" Fred smirked. "You can tell your editors that nothing bad will ever happen to me and my ship. Why would you ever be thinking of that?" "I suppose one can't help speculating on the superstitions as one of these boats cast off from the docks. I've met a few historians who worked at the Kadono Historical Society, and I've been amazed of the stories they've told me about marine disasters and shipwrecks, especially what happened to the Spirit of Freedom nearly 150 years ago. Every sailor and dock worker in Morimo has been speculating how superstitious things get nowadays. Oh, that must have been terrible to them, but not me and my men. That's too cautious a word. Terrible. You see, those who went out there, they might never return. But that was 1 in 1,000. It's already her 7th year at sea, and my crew have no idea how fortunate this sailing is going to be, Mr. Farrell. Expect to come back here with a bigger haul, just like the last time. You tell your editors that, especially your editor-in-chief." "And to think I was told that the men in the harbor are superstitious out of their wits," Sid muttered. As the photographer heads back down the gangway, Fred said to Kozlov, "Hoist up the mainsail! Raise the anchor and hold the gangway ashore! It's time!" Kozlov nodded and ordered the crew, "All hands to stations!" Then he heads to the wheelhouse. As soon as Kitty heads back down on deck, she can hear him shout, "All ahead slow, Mr. McGinty," along with the ringing sound of the Chadburn. Then a loud whistle makes her jump and let out a short yelp as it thunderously splits the air. She turns around and looks up at the whistle on the funnel, blowing out steam. Smoke is already billowing out from the twin boilers, fed into 6 furnaces by the stokers inside. Looking down at her hands, she can see that her claws have protruded from her fingers. She quickly retracts them. "Front bow! Back stern!" Fred barked at Kitty. "You don't get it right! I toss you out the little round window! This ain't no picnic or pleasure cruise! Hope you like dogfish!" He gave a laugh as he begins to sing. "A British tar is a soaring soul, as free as a mountain bird. His energetic fist should be ready to resist a dictatorial word. His nose should bend and his lips should curl. His cheeks should flame and his brow should furl. His bosom should heave and his heart should glow, and his fists be ever ready for a knockdown blow." The Maybelle's whistle blasts again, causing her to cover her ears. "Now hear this," he instructs. "As a volunteer, albeit female, you're aboard the steam trawler Maybelle, and I run this tub with an iron hand. You'll jump when I holler. We're doing a job here, and I ain't got time to watch you get hooks in your ear and fall overboard. Ship with me, and you'll do all right. Cross me, and I'll slap you into the brig before you can catch a mouse. If you can catch one, that is. Now, if you're ready, let's get rich!" Then he moves up into the wheelhouse. With everyone on board at their stations, the lines were cast off, and the Maybelle pulls away from the pier and set out to sea. She makes her way towards the stern, and looked longingly back at the city, especially the clock tower that stood out from the other buildings, wondering with a mixture of excitement and sadness if she would ever see it again. Under her breath, so softly she was certain even the crew couldn't hear her, she whispered,
"Goodbye, Kadono. Goodbye, Pratchett's. I will come back to you."
Then her attention darted to navigator and radio operator Lawrence Larry Barnes, who was reaching a hand towards her. "If you can follow me, I'll show you where you'll be sleeping," he said. "If there's anything that you need, please don't hesitate to ask." He was 39, with black messy hair and matching square glasses. He was dressed in a worn tweed jacket with a matching cap, black jeans and matching shoes. Sighing, she follows them to the bow. Sailors stared at them as they passed. Kitty knew that she must be strange cargo for these men, unaccustomed as they would be to having a woman on board. However, they didn't know what she really is.
Have you said your farewells to the city too?
She asked. "'Tis a sore thing, leaving my family behind," he asked. "My cousin especially."
So what are you also?
"I'm a biologist for both sea, land, and air, as well as an expert in sociology, a study of how the world works. I'm also interested in classic literature. What about you? What are your interests?"
I'm interested in making friends out of grown-ups.
"I see that. And where were you from originally?" "I'm originally from the town of Donegal before moving to Kadono in 1917 during the war. I thank my lucky stars for not fighting in the field."
Strange. I've never been so tired. After all, I came this far from Morimo to be on the ship.
He leads her to the forecastle of the ship. The inside of the place was a musty stench, which made her wince and turn her nose away, her mouth opening and gagging. There were 6 metal bunk beds against the port side and 4 lockers, the same with the starboard side, enough for 24. There was also a metal stove that can give off heat and smoke from the vents above.
Do you really expect me to accommodate here?
She demanded. "I know. That's not a pleasant smell, is it?" he said. He nodded sympathetically. "It'll dissipate in a day or 2. It's really very comfortable when you get used to it."
For 8 days, I'm sure.
She walks over to one of the bunks and pressed her hands on the mattress.
Of course, that depends.
She placed her suitcase down as he went on. "Of course, you wouldn't want to spend the expedition confined here. In the Maybelle, you can go anywhere you like, except the engine room, the boiler room, and the coal bunkers. I surely don't want to see a girl like you get hurt, or worse. Now then, your towels and linens are underneath the bottom bunk, life jackets and raincoats in the lockers in need of an emergency, the raincoats for working in the rain. Wash place is next to the entrance, water closet is next to it. We have 20 tons of drinking water and fresh water tanks for the piping. You get up at 7, have 15 minutes to get clean and ready for breakfast and the mess, depending on who gets to go first. All right, I shall be needed at the wireless room. I will see you again." Then he left. Cyril Lefebvre, the ship's specialist, came into the room with a clipboard. "All right, jeune femme," he said. "If you can sit down and answer the questions, you'll be on your way." He was a balding Frenchman with a short, stout figure and an egg-shaped head. His distinctive features was a black toothbrush mustache under his hooked nose, and his small piggy eyes behind black eyeglasses. Kitty sat down with a creak. "Have you ever been seriously stricken with a contagious disease?" he asked. "I don't want the whole ship to end up sick." She shook her head. "Are you subject to fits?"
Fits?
she asked. "Convulsions? Sudden attack of acute disease?" She shook her head.
No.
"Do you have body lice?"
Like fleas?
He gave an almost imperceptible nod. "No body lice." Then he studied his clipboard again. "Are you mentally ill?"
I'm starting to wonder,
she said.
because I had to sleep here.
He stifles a laugh. He thrust the clipboard and pencil out to her. "Stick your moniker here. Your name." She signed the form using the alias Kitty Felinis. "Now, jeune femme, if you feel any fatigue, uneasiness, dizziness, or vomiting during the expedition, come find me in my office behind the funnel. If not, you'll have someone to escort you there. Of course, that depends whether or not she feels sick of sleeping with a bunch of strangers." He smiled. "Well, I'm off. Continue getting yourself acquainted here. That'll give you enough time to know your surroundings. You'll need them. We'll be arriving at the North Sea at about 6:15. And when the CGK has confirmed clear skies and calm waters for us, then we begin fishing." She watched him leave. At the same time, She can't help but think.
Odd sort of fellow. Has a precise way of speaking.